I'm going to do a quick patch analysis of the most important changes of 7.16. To start things off, there's various heroes that got their movement speed talents nerfed. Some agi heroes got plus 1.5 HP regen, which means they'll be a little bit better in the laning stage and won't rely as heavily on health regen items such as tangos and salves. There's also Roshan's attack damage is now, he has better gains, he's been lifting a lot more, so he has more damage in the later parts of the game, especially because of these extra damage per minute gain. This patch brought a lot of buffs to various heroes. One of the biggest ones was Ogre Magi. He got way better chances of getting his multicast, so literally the hero has so much luck. When you're like multicasting way more, you're just doing more damage, doing more stuns and crowd control. The other thing is that his level 10 GPM talent is now, instead of plus 60, has gone up to plus 90, which for the type of hero that Ogre Magi is, this benefits him very heavily because he's going to get his items much easier. The other hero that got a pretty big buff was Clinks. His strafe dodge no longer has a count limit, so basically it allows him to disjoint projectiles only from attacks. I tested out with abilities and you just can't disjoint those abilities projectiles. Say like Sven's Stormhammer, you can disjoint that by blinking away, but you can't do it with Clinks's strafe. So this is more so a buff to him against ranged heroes. Centaur got a minor buff, which is pretty much making up for last patch. What happened last patch was his total mana pool got reduced because of the base int change, but this patch what's happened is that the hoof stomp mana cost is now reduced on earlier levels. This means that he'll be able to do hoof stomps easier on the earlier levels. I think that what was happening was that you couldn't use 2 hoof stomps in a row. When your spell would come back off cooldown, you wouldn't actually have a large enough mana pool to use 2 hoof stomps in the space of the cooldown between that spell. So if you're a support player, you'll really like that these next 2 heroes got buffed, Crystal Maiden and Dazzle. So Crystal Maiden's Arcane Aura, which is the mana regen aura if you don't know what it is, so that got buffed on earlier levels. So that's one of the things that really makes the laning stage with Crystal Maiden much stronger, not just only in the lane that she is, but in also other lanes. Her base damage also got increased by plus 2, which is quite minor, but it is something that helps small little bits. Now going on to Dazzle, his poison touch is now weaker on early levels but a little bit stronger on later levels. However, one of the bigger changes is that it has lower cooldown on all levels, so at level 1 you'll be able to use poison touch every single creep wave. It used to be 35 seconds, now I think it's like 27 seconds, which is pretty big. It allows you to harass every single time the creep wave comes in. Now that I was just talking about Dazzle, another hero that combines really well with Dazzle is Husker. So now Husker also got buffs. His heal costs less mana and it heals for more, as well as that his ultimate, which is Life Break, now does more damage on the later levels. And what's really important about Life Break is that it's percentage based damage. So in later parts of the game, a lot of heroes that build heart or have lots of strength gain, say like Centaur, you end up doing a larger amount of damage to him just with your ultimate. This is pretty much a big buff to Husker and Dazzle combo. So if you're an Invoker player, you'll really like this buff, is that his Invoke mana cost went from 40 to 0. Yes, it's like no mana, so there's literally no disincentive to constantly be switching through spells. However, the thing is that you gotta question, is it any use to buy an Agnib Scepter? We might see more interesting builds on Invoker based up to this. I've even seen stuff like Helmet of Dominator Invoker. I even saw Rod of Aetos, just because of the fact that it takes a little bit too long for the hero to come online. These weird item builds that you might not have seen before might become more regular on Invoker. Now the other hero that got a pretty interesting change as well, which is again is a buff, and this patch has like so many buffs, is Magnus. His Empower now matches the same cleave size and range as Battle Fury. So this is really interesting, and it essentially changes his Empower, so it's like a free Battle Fury in his skill set. Morana also got buffs, longer ultimate duration, so it went from 15 seconds to 18 seconds, and this works really well with her cooldown reduction on her ultimate talent. The other thing that happened as well with her is her leap attack speed buff is now stronger at every level. She gives even more attack speed This is 2 patches very recently, I think it was 7.14. They also buffed physical damage Mirana, so we might start seeing a little bit more of her. Pangolier got a few talent buffs, and one of the most important ones is that on level 25, his Rolling Thunder cooldown reduction has gone from 15 seconds to minus 35 seconds. This is pretty big, and it makes him a little bit more viable than he used to be. The other hero that got a really interesting buff was Phantom Assassin. So now her blur only triggers on real heroes, so it ignores illusions, as well as this it triggers on invisible and spell immune enemies. So what does this exactly mean? It basically means that PA will be able to tell when someone is coming close to them. It means it's very good against Riki if he's standing in lane near her, very good against Riki off lane because you can tell where he is, and as well as like Slark if he's just coming up to you, you can tell if you have good reactions and you are looking at your blur buff in your like heads up display, you'll be able to tell if invisible hero is coming towards you. Now the big thing about this is that the radius is 600 units. To give you a perspective of that, Blink Dagger's maximum range is 1200 units, so it's a really big range. And even other heroes like say Bat Rider, when he's trying to loop around, you can tell when he's getting closer to you. And again, the fact that the radius of blur being bigger than Blink allows you to react before heroes can jump on you. Phantom Lancer's Doppelganger can no longer be cast while he's rooted. This only stands to reason. A lot of these mobility or escape abilities can't be cast while you're rooted. They're like muted. So this is more keeping consistency throughout the game, but it does affect Phantom Lancer pretty heavily. It means Rod of Athos is a better item against him. The other hero, Pudge, very popular hero, and he's still even being picked a lot, even though with all the nerfs that's been going over time. But guess what? He got a nerf. So his meat hook now has a longer cooldown, but the damage is higher, so it gives him better ability to kill people. But if he misses the hook, it's way more detrimental. And the problem that more so happens with this change is the fact that it makes his laning stage even weaker and his presence overall in the map weaker as a whole. This is literally one of Pudge's weakest points, and it's got even weaker. So Shadow Fiend got some minor changes to his talents. They got swapped around and stuff, but the most notable change is that his +2 damage per souls is now back on level 20 rather than say the +3 damage per soul on level 25. Another hero, Ursa, got very similar changes for this, which was like talents switching around, but one of the most notable ones of Ursa is now on level 25. He has a talent which gives his Enrage gains 80% status resistance, which is really big, seeing as status resistance kind of got like not taken out of the game, but it was removed very heavily throughout the game. And now Ursa is one of the heroes that has literally one of the most status resistance in the game, which is really big. So one of the heroes that got a pretty big nerf was Night Stalker. What happened was that they changed the way his darkness affects Fog of War, so now it's a little bit weaker than what it used to be. As well as this, his Void no longer mini stuns during the day. A lot of this is pretty much because of the fact that how much he was picked and banned at the last major, which was ESL Birmingham. As well as this, other heroes that were sometimes really weak against Night Stalker, like Sniper, had his night vision buffed. So from 1100 units to 1004. This is just a really important interaction to know about if you are going to start picking Night Stalker again, that there is various changes. Now going on to another hero which has kind of been changed a lot recently, which is Tiny. He keeps getting like big buffs and nerfed and all this stuff. I don't think Valve even know what they're doing themselves with him. But basically what's happened this time is that his tree grab building bonus damage has been increased by 50% on all levels. Makes him much better at just taking objectives. As well as this, his tree throw splash damage has been increased. These are interesting changes. I don't know if he will become a big pick in the current patch, but it is definitely a step forward to bring him into a more balanced state, because at the moment he's just so weak. The other hero that's really interesting changes is Wraith King. It's not that interesting, but it's important that if you're playing the hero that you know the changes, that his Mortal Strike got changes with his like skeleton. It's not really a buff or a nerf, but it's just a change in the way that the ability works. Also, Zeus got multiple buffs, and he's going to be super annoying in pub games. His right click damage is now +6 damage on level 1, so he's way better at last hitting in lane, yet he has lower damage from his arc lightning, which is the skill he spams in lane. It's a very minor nerf, but basically on level 2 of his like arc lightning, it's like 5 damage less, so there's like barely any difference with him spamming his spell in lane, but it basically makes him stronger in lane, which I think is one of the weaker points of the hero. If you don't have a good laning stage, the hero doesn't always do that well. Sometimes he can come back, but it is an important thing to know that Zeus has got buffed, and as well as that, this is not the only buff that Zeus has gotten. His lightning bolt now has more damage on earlier levels and has a longer cast range on later levels, so he's a hero that you want to watch out for. His win rate is pretty high in a lot of brackets of like in MMR based stuff and pub games. He isn't picked that much in pro games, which is probably why he's getting buffed right now. So I've been talking mostly buffs up until now, so I'm going to highlight some of the nerfs that are really important. With Io, he got a lot of talent nerfs this patch. The previous patch he got like way too many buffs. He went up to almost a 60% win rate, or I think maybe even higher than a 60% win rate in Divine matches. And as well as this, at the ESL Birmingham Major, he was banned nearly every single game. I don't think he got through the picking phase once without either being picked or banned. He got picked once and he won that match. Literally no one wanted to play against him because he's just so strong at that skill level of players. The other hero that got a nerf was Bane. His enfeebled duration is now lower on early levels. This is basically where you get this Bane that just comes into your mid lane, uses enfeeble on you. It's really annoying, you just can't last it, and he's not really harassing you. The duration used to last way too long. Now it's a little bit more reasonable. As well as this, Riki has got nerfed. His Tricks of the Trade cooldown is being increased on all levels, so it's like not as good for him. That was one of his best ways of escaping. As well as this, his invisibility fade delay is now longer on a lot of the levels. So this is not great for Riki. I mentioned earlier how PA can counter him, but one of the other things that's a really big nerf to Riki is sentry wards. The duration has been increased from 4 minutes to 6 minutes. It's essentially a 50% increase in the time that sentry wards last on the ground. This is massive for support players and is pretty hard if you're playing something like Riki or any hero that relies very heavily on Shadowplay like Slark. This is direct nerfs to these heroes. You probably see like the Riki plague was going on there for a while. We'll probably see the Riki plague die down and maybe even have a negative win rate coming into this patch, which I think a lot of people will be happy about. The other hero which I like to play, which is Tusk, he's gotten nerfed as well, so his Ice Shard's cooldown is now much longer. You will really need this -6 cooldown reduction talent. However, the problem is that that doesn't come until level 25. However, you do have an XP gain talent on earlier levels. So this is not great for Tusk. He really relies on Ice Shards throughout the game. There was a few other changes to items, but most of them are very minor, and the most important ones are the fact that the price of some items are a little bit cheaper, so you'll probably get them like 30 to 60 seconds earlier. If you manage to get this far in the video, I hope you enjoyed it. I also have a bunch of other mechanics videos about Dota, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. As well as this, I have set up a Discord server, so if you want to go join that, you can chat with me. As well as that, I'll be doing some giveaways leading up to TI, so you can buy yourself a battle pass or even some battle pass levels.